And with that, and at this time, let's go ahead and begin today's event, Assertiveness for Women, Finding the Right Balance. I would like to introduce our moderator for today, and that is Christina Cleveland, Senior Director, Talent Development Solutions at Canadian Management Center. Christina has experience leading global project teams through complex leadership development implementations and partners with CMC clients to consult through the analysis and development of their leadership strategies. Christina, with that, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Aaron, and hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days to be with us today. We are so excited to welcome over 1,200 women to today's session, and we're really looking forward to the discussion and conversation. So we are going to jump straight into it. I'm just going to be able to move forward the slides in just a moment. But for those of you who are new to Canadian Management Center, we do want to introduce ourselves to you. So we are located oops, sorry, I think I'm on the wrong section there. We are located, headquarters is in Toronto, but we do have presence across the country. And Canadian Management Center is just the strategic affiliate of American Management Association. And we actually have participation today from individuals in the U.S., so we're excited to welcome you today. CMC's main focus is to prepare the next generation of leaders for tomorrow's marketplace, and we have been active in Canada for the last 50 years, delivering open enrollment sessions across the country and also bringing our training into a variety of organizations in the public and private sector in a number of different topic areas. So for those of you who have continued to follow CMC through our webinar series, welcome back to you. You will know then that we do also invite your discussion on Twitter. For those of you who may be new to us, our Twitter handle is @Canadian Management, and you can join the conversation today using the hashtag CMCEvents. Every unique tweet will qualify as an entry into our contest, where we're doing 50 courses that we're giving away to celebrate our 50-year anniversary. So for every unique tweet using the hashtag CMCEvents, an entry will be put into our contest for our March giveaway. The March contest closes at 11:59 p.m. on March 31st. That's 11:59 Eastern Time, so do feel free to join us in the discussion online today. After today's session, you will also receive an email that will give you a link to a recording of today's session, which will also give you a visual of the slides, so you'll have that as a reference and takeaway. So we'll be following up with that towards the end of this week for you. But we do have a lot to talk about today, so we want to get right into the topic. And we usually start our webinars answering the why this topic today. But I also want to answer the question about why now. So International Women's Day, many of you may be aware, was actually this past Saturday, March the 8th. And if you had ever had an opportunity to go to the website internationalwomensday.com, you would have learned that it's a global hub encouraging advocacy for women's advancement. And the first International Women's Day was in 1911, and every year the UN declares a theme, and for 2014 the theme is actually inspiring change. So as it relates to the why now, we wanted to offer a session that is focused on a need specific for women, tying into the celebration of International Women's Day, which celebrates how far we have come, but also and it takes a look at opportunities that we have to continue to move things forward. So why this particular topic is that as women, we have many roles to play, and many of those roles are caretaking roles. So we are daughters, sisters, wives, partners, mothers, employees, leaders, colleagues, and friends. Generally, we want to be liked and accepted, which sometimes leaves us compromising ourselves out of what we want, tying into the fact that we take on many of these caretaking roles, and our priority often lends itself towards taking care of others. We're not always taught how to express ourselves, and this will vary depending on each of us in terms of how we've grown up, some of our experiences, some of the things that may have happened during childhood that have shaped us as individuals. But we have all, I'm sure, at some point heard about the good girl mindset and needing to be good girls, and that follows us through life. And in some cases, we're often afraid to ask for what we want. So CMC does offer a course, Assertiveness Training for Women in Business. And to us, assertiveness is about advocating for our own wants and needs in a way that is positive and proactive, while still being open to the same for others. So we definitely wanted to continue this conversation with you. And our Assertiveness Training for Women in Business program actually is going to be running this week. And delivering the session for us is Nellie Vieira. So I'm really excited to welcome Nellie to our webinar today. Nellie has been a CMC facilitator since 1993. She is incredibly talented and sought after by many of our clients. She's an internationally recognized negotiation expert. She specializes in assertiveness, influence, and communication skills development. And she's absolutely committed to developing the skills and talents of women. She brings incredible passion and energy, and we always know when Nellie is in the house, and I'm sure you're going to benefit from what she has to share with us in terms of insights today. So Nellie, without further ado, would love to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, and hello everyone out there. Hello everyone looking at this picture right now of all these amazing and powerful and successful and having achieved women. I am always so excited and proud to be standing in front of a group of them each time I'm here at CMC facilitating this assertiveness course. And part of what I always witness, and as I look at this picture, the exact same thing is true, is that we look at one another and we think, wow, look how much we've actually achieved. Look at the power that that woman has. Look at the success that she has gained and the fame even that she is being attributed with. And yet, you know, whether they are women of power or achievement or fame, the interesting thing that I find over and over and over is each has had to make some kind of decisions along the way in their life about the roles that they were playing. And as part of that, they had to endure the never-ending quest for the balance. And this is what we're talking about today, is that balance. I want to be successful. I want to be famous. And I'm also a woman, which is a really strange sideline. Yet the problem is that it's not that they're having trouble in the balance with how they manage the roles so much as how they actually feel about themselves as a result of it. And this is where the bottom line comes in, because we're all out there being extremely successful. And sometimes we still walk away feeling as though we're not. So it's as much a professional thing as it is a personal thing. And oftentimes we can be super strong on a professional level, and then we get home and we realize that we're a doormat. Or we can be the opposite. We can have such strength and command the household, and yet we get to our office and we can't even bring up a suggestion or an idea or a question for fear of what may happen as a repercussion. So, in terms of how would you know when you were being assertive? Oftentimes, one of the things that, especially during the session that gets brought up, is people want to describe the things that they aren't able to do. They talk about what makes them scared or nervous or what holds them back, literally just what stops us from being assertive. Yet my question to them is always, how do you know you want to be assertive? What is it that you're not doing right now that you think you would be doing? Or what would change? Or what sort of things would happen or be happening if you did feel that you were an assertive woman? And I always find that the answers to that question is extremely varied. It varies on basically experience, it varies on age groups, it varies on culture, it varies on so many things that have been brought to light now. And especially in our working world, it's like an amazing impact that it may have. So when we often talk about how would we know when we're being assertive, are you able to say no? That's one of the first things I often ask people. Do you have the strength to say no? And it's funny that we even need the strength when really it's just a decision. I don't want to work late this evening. No, I don't want to go to that dinner party. No, I don't want to actually associate with this individual that you are going to visit right now. Saying no is a pretty direct and simple thing, and it's funny that ever since we learned how to say it when we were babies, the one thing we were told to do is not to say it after that. And unfortunately, it's the one thing that got told to us probably more than anything else. Being more honest is also another part of being assertive, and I know that one usually comes as a shocker to many people. Being more honest simply means that you're expressing who it is that you are, and you're saying what's really going on in a very respectful way. It does not impose on the rights of others. It's simply an expression of your own thoughts or your own feelings, and that in itself would be something that we would be.
So we've got some feedback coming in.
Wonderful.
You could put the question into the chat panel about how would you know you're being assertive. So if you haven't had an opportunity to contribute, feel free to submit your thoughts there. But in terms of behaviors or characteristics people would be demonstrating, some of the feedback we're receiving is that I would feel proud of myself. I'd be able to raise my voice. I would be setting boundaries. I wouldn't feel the need to be defending myself or feeling as though I was a threat. I wouldn't feel resistance from others. I'm not leaving something unsaid that needs to be said. I'm able to accomplish my goals. I get respect, and I feel heard.
All of these things are definitely shared by many. This is, and I know that sometimes in feeling the lack or feeling that we aren't assertive, we often believe that we're alone or that everyone is reading our brains or understanding, how we might be seeing ourselves in that moment. The fascinating thing is that we defend ourselves because of the fear of what it is that we think it might mean to others that it doesn't mean to us. We become very closed in how it is that we express anything, whether it's our voice volume that we keep down because we just, in essence, on a physical basis, are not being heard, and then we wonder why we're not being heard. We allow others to actually impose their feelings and their thoughts on us long before we have the opportunity to actually express our own or feel that we don't have the right to express our own. And this, unfortunately, I hate to tell you, comes from some unfinished business in our own adolescence. These are things that, adolescence and in our childhood, these are things that have just been rocked and left behind as incomplete and inconsistent behaviors that we have not yet figured out how to manage and or we have suppressed or repressed somehow in order to be able to accomplish and compete and do what we actually need to do in life and in general.
So, what's amazing to me, Nellie, is just the comments that are coming in from others and the unity in what we're feeling. So, even though we may be feeling alone in some of this, the responses that are flowing in right now from our peer group is that we actually share a lot of these concerns.
Oh, hugely, hugely. Yeah. I always find it fascinating, and one of the exercises we go through is just recognizing what rights we have. And it's really an interesting story because it's almost as though we are fighting for everything as women, which is not absolutely necessary. And yet by that I mean that we think it's an actual struggle or a push in order to have our voices heard. If we really consider our rights, those same rights that we were born with, the right to feel, the right to like or dislike, the right to change our mind, the right to have a sense or a feeling that could be different than someone else's. And all of those things are nurtured, are part of who we are as a person. And I very, very strongly believe that in our makeup, just in our makeup alone, there is the element that is our nature. And ladies, it is our nature. We are women, and thus we have one capacity that is far-reaching beyond any man, at least I'm sure in my existence it'll never happen, but as far as the ability to procreate and to actually bear children, on a physical level only is the only thing that separates us with. And yet, that alone, from a nature perspective, generations upon generations, have put that burden and or, however you may view it, and or that absolute and that sense of guilt then that it becomes by our very nature. There's almost an expectation that we are to fulfill that element of it. And yet truly, there's the nurture. There's the portion by which you grew up, the elements of whatever it is that your parents, caregivers, the people that you had mentor you and had you believe in what it is that the world was about, that would have then somehow shaped a few of your thoughts and feelings about what was either expected of you and or what it was that you wanted to challenge the world with because of what was expected of you. And that's the portion that makes up the I. You see, the nature and the nurture plus the I, meaning your independent thinking, your assessment of those values and those traditions and those ways of being. That I portion is the one that then when we pull it all together, it's what makes up me. It's what makes up who it is that we are on an individual, not on a collective, on an individual basis. And each one is unique and is definitely powerful in of itself.
So, Nellie, we want to definitely get some input from the audience. So we're about to open up a poll here for everyone to participate in. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the options available to you to respond to. Because I think rationally, what you're sharing, Nellie, makes sense to us, but something's holding us back.
Absolutely.
So the question that we have is, if I speak up and assert myself, people will, and the options are there. Either think I'm bossy, won't understand me, not like me or not like what I have to say. They may push back or not do what I'm asking. And the last one noted is that they may ignore me. So what we'd like to do is just get you to take a minute and respond there. We'll keep the poll open. Some of these responses were already coming in through the discussion within the chat panel about some of the things that sort of stop us and hold us back from asserting ourselves. So as we're wrapping up the responses, we'll give it another few seconds to complete. But it looks like at this point, think I'm bossy.
Absolutely. The think I'm bossy rhymes in with the I'm supposed to be nice. And so when we're not nice, or when there isn't that element of overly polite, nurturing, that sense of being just so sweet, it borders on the equal and opposite, meaning that now we're bossy, we're aggressive, we're overbearing, we're hard to handle. Certainly all the same things that, and certainly this is not about male bashing, but all the same things that characteristically would never be attributed to a male, where, a statement is made or was something is asserted that it would imply that they were being bossy as much as just direct. And this is what we need to be much better at being clear and direct. So the funny thing that I do when I hear these, because the other one that was, aside from bossy, was not liking me, was probably the next highest, having people not like me. I find it really fascinating, and again, in my sessions, I often ask people the very in-your-face question, so what? So what if somebody doesn't like you? So what if somebody thinks what they think of you? We have things that we can actually control, and that's literally where we can control how other people might think of us by, in fact, influencing how they think, by speaking up to allow them to see and understand, by expressing what it is that we think and feel, so that they're not guessing at it as much as we are positioning it. How other people think, though, we cannot control. And I often ask people, do you want people to like who you're trying to be, or do you actually want people to like who you are? Because what relationships are you creating, and what is it that's necessitating the need for that relationship that you might not even want if what it is that they're looking for is not who you are? So I find it, again, something that is our own complex dilemma, where we're trying to be what everyone else wants us to be, and that's because we are afraid that they may be thinking what, in fact, unfortunately, we are thinking of ourselves if we're not behaving in that way. And that's what's oftentimes so hard to take.
So, Nellie, if we kind of think about the continuum, because I think some of the comments that were coming in terms of thinking I'm bossy, some people often interpret that as being aggressive.
Exactly.
And a question has come in through the chat panel, but how do you know you're being assertive versus being difficult or being bossy?
There's a very simple dividing line that happens between assertion and aggression, and that happens between assertion and submission. Literally, when you are assertive, you are clearly, honestly, and directly expressing who you are, how you feel, what you want, what you think, anything. It is a statement that is owned by you and or a request that is desired by you that does not impose on the rights of others. It is issued and delivered, and it stands with respect. Now, when we move towards the aggressive, how does that shift itself when we get aggressive? Aggressive now imposes on the rights of others. It shows disregard and disrespect for the rights of others. It oftentimes will be a telling statement as opposed to an asking question. It will not be empathetic in incurring or at least considering the rights of others or the needs of others. And then the equal and the opposite of that in being submissive or passive, what we end up doing is we have other people's rights and needs supersede our own. We allow who they are and what they want to be over and above anything that could be important to us. And so in the line of assertive, we need to also be responsive. And that simply means that we're understanding of the fact that there are other people in the world, and who I am and what I want is not a singular act or a single person on the earth, as much as how I get along and how I work with others in order to make that happen allows me to be responsive. Whereas aggressive and submissive, far below the line.
Okay. So, Nellie, coming back to, what holds us back, so that aspect of potentially being perceived as bossy, that you and I had this conversation in preparing for today that, what often holds us back is fear.
Yeah, that big fear word. So I always ask people, so what are we afraid of? What are we afraid of? The fascinating answer to that most of the time is that we're always afraid of the things that we think are going to be more dangerous than what they really are. We create Armageddon in our heads. We create reactions. We create emotions and retaliations and repercussions that are a fantasy, really. And quite often when they are attached to any fact, i.e., we have a very aggressive boss, or we have somebody who, as far as they're concerned, your words are not really important words, and so we think that if we're going to speak up, that's going to cost us something, or we're going to have a repercussion. Well, again, I have to ask you, when we are asserting ourselves, are we really imposing anything? Are we really looking for retaliation or for a consequence? No. When we're asserting ourselves, we're merely actually aiding the situation. We're looking to contribute effectively. We are looking to inquire so that we can be much more professional and or effective in the way in which either an organization or an individual wants us to be. But then we've got to make choices. And you see, this is where the fear steps in, is because when we are at a point of having to pursue or be in a particular way with someone, in our behavior, in our feelings, in how it is that we even work or dress or look, when we are doing it and it is in conflict or in contradiction to how it is that we really feel about ourselves, to what it is that we really believe is good or true, that in itself is what causes us our greatest demise, because we're constantly trying to pretend and or substitute the truth of what it is that we are. And that's a horrible place to be. Fear is fear. And fear, I will tell you right now, even when we do become fully assertive, meaning we're able to express what we want, we're able to feel as we do, and we're also willing to accept that someone has the right to say yes or no to anything we ask for. When we feel that sense of comfort, it's also important to note that the fear never actually goes away, that it is something that from our own way of being we maintain. It might lessen, in other words, through time and through the practiced response. Yet that trigger, that initial reaction, that sense that you might get, or that question in your mind, it can be calmed. It can be worked with if we practice and we actually reintroduce ourselves to who it is that we really are.
And that was one thing that I just found fascinating as we were discussing today, Nellie, that you just said overcoming fear is not the goal. It really is about how you manage it. So you can't eliminate it, but it can be crippling to us or, leave us paralyzed and not knowing what to do or how to move forward unless we learn how to actively manage it.
And everyone's response is going to be different. You see, we don't want to assertiveness is not about creating a specific personality either. Your personality needs to prevail. And unfortunately, when we're not assertive, this is exactly what's happening, is that our own personality and style is not prevailing. It's what we assume others want to see and or hear that we then hold ourselves back because we can't act that out, or we hesitate because we don't feel that that's in line with what we really think. And then we're not heard, and then we're not understood, and then we're confusing, or then we contradict ourselves, or then we make mistakes, or then we actually end up creating the very things that we were afraid of in the first place. And the disease to please certainly causes that. because the very reason that we attempt to please and to do for others is in the belief that we're going to be liked or that we're going to be better accepted. And when that doesn't come true, it's actually because of the anxiety we're already creating in not being who it is that we are. That's pretty scary. Actually, even me just saying that out loud seems scary.
So what we wanted to do, though, today was talk about some solutions, right, or some strategies that we can all employ that are going to help us manage that fear aspect. So getting comfortable in our own skin is a concept that you talk about in the Assertiveness Training for Women in Business course. So we wanted to go through some of those ideas today.
I so love this piece. It's an element. The skin, of course, is used as an acronym in this particular piece in the course. But it's also, when Christina and I were talking about this session, it's also something that resonates with top of mind, the reality of what has to happen and what we need to go through in order to really work towards a more assertive and powerful life. I mean, literally, when I say powerful, it's not about you gaining power as much as you feeling the sense of power for yourself and your way of being. So in SKIN, as the acronym, it suggests a few things. Supporting self-esteem is one, and then knowing yourself is most important. Initiating dialogue, which is what comes when we are capable of doing the first two, and the ability to negate negative self-talk, which, my goodness, our own brains are our worst enemies. The things that we say to ourselves are the things that deplete us the most. But when we look at it from can I continue with those?
Yeah.
When we look at it from a piece-by-piece perspective, supporting self-esteem is our means of validation. Self-esteem is a difficult word, and many of us don't even talk about it very much, and certainly it's not something that's brought up in business. I often even talk about a business's esteem or the purpose that it has, the values it holds. Well, people are exactly the same way. Self-esteem is the value and regard you have for yourself, the acknowledgement of what it is that you believe in, that you think is important in life, and the way in which you view yourself in that life, how it is that you actually picture yourself in the rest of the world, and what role you play, what contribution you make, what feelings you have, and what peace you actually execute. All of that is then our self-regard, our way of strengthening that peace that embodies us with our acknowledgement and validation and sense of acceptance, which really is what we want. This is ultimately assertion is about our ability to self-validate, because we've been looking to have external validation our entire life. And so knowing that self-esteem is about you then saying to yourself, I'm okay. I am actually a really amazing person. And knowing your strengths applies to that. The more we work on actually seeing what have we got that others don't always say they have. What actually do we do really well? What are some of our talents? What are some of the things that I am easily capable of accomplishing or bringing forward or being that I notice other people sometimes struggle with? Knowing your strengths is super important. It is what we probably don't do often enough. And amazingly, I've often even heard of people when they're attempting to build their self-esteem using little tricks like writing notes to their friends, sending out a note to all of their friends and just saying, I'm wondering if you could just give me a few words that would describe what you believe are some strengths of mine, or reasons why you like me, or why is it you're my friend? These are things that oftentimes we don't ask each other, and yet we always think that somebody's going to lie to us. I guess maybe that's what it is. We have this thing among women that we're either as bound and bond and held as strongly together as possible, and we're there for each other, or we're ripping each other's eyes out or stabbing each other in the back because it is so competitive and it is so difficult for us to actually feel a sense of self independent of how we're compared to everyone else. So supporting your self-esteem means you're okay, just as you are. You are who you are, and it isn't by comparison. And the minute you do start making the comparison, that's when the trouble starts. because you will always find someone that has greater strengths than yours, and you will always find others that have no strengths that you have. And so that is just the way the world rides, but how we ride in it then becomes problematic. So looking at accomplishments, and when I say accomplishments, oftentimes in my session people are concerned that, if they haven't become senior VP, or if the accomplishment was that they didn't get a PhD, or that they haven't actually even finished high school, or whatever it is, they look more at what they have not achieved rather than recognizing what they did achieve. To have overcome a death in a family at an early age, to have had to raise a child by themselves, to have gone back to school when it seemed impossible, to have taken on a job that they knew nothing about and actually made it successful, and to be able to just simply spend a day knowing that at the end of it, they still have time for their children, and they make that time, and they see it as an accomplishment for what it is that they might want to attribute. Or they make that time to go to the gym and feel great, and they have incorporated that as part of their plan in life. These are accomplishments, and I don't think we take the smallest of accomplishments seriously enough, because really, and I'm going to say this openly, it was the smallest of tribulations and traumas that actually caused our invalidation to begin with. It is usually the tiniest of things that has cost us and put a taint or a mark in some way, shape, or form that has had us believe a lie, or believe an untruth, or believe something that was developed by or for somebody else. Supporting self-esteem is one way in which we overcome all that, because it really forces us to get to know ourselves, which happens to be the next step.
So I want to pause there. That was such a powerful segment, and I was getting comments from people indicating that it's such a huge topic. This is like a day or more in and of itself. But I think, you make some brilliant points, Nellie, in that, we don't take time out to congratulate ourselves for what we may consider to be small or insignificant wins, but, there are things that we do every single day that are, in fact, accomplishments.
Huge.
And one of our participants actually commented on the idea of self-branding, and I think about the supporting self-esteem aspect and knowing your strengths and recognizing your accomplishments and thinking about the world we live in where, many of us have LinkedIn profiles, and on those LinkedIn profiles is an opportunity for you to toot your own horn and, provide lists about what you're capable of and share some of the details about what your experience may have been, and that can be incredibly difficult for us to write. But in a day where we have a chance to, create our own personal brands by sort of capturing or articulating the value that we bring and that we have contributed is available to us as a tool or a mechanism. But that's an opportunity for us to start today to take a look at our LinkedIn profiles and identify how are we capturing our strengths, doing the activities you talked about asking some of our peers or coworkers to share with us what they perceive to be our strengths.
And genuinely, not, this isn't about just liking or, giving somebody a check mark, as much as it's really being genuine with what it is that you can boast about yourself. And I do mean boast, because it means that we do need to speak out loud. We do need to let others know where we stand. So absolutely, and that's a fabulous tool. I certainly hope nobody looks up mine because it's not updated, so there it is right there. But it's one of those things. I want to be, in your face and definitely able to say what needs to be said. And quite often I find those sorts of things to be ultimately cumbersome, and yet I can certainly see that they're phenomenal as a tool to be able to highlight, especially when we're trying to find our voice, especially when we want to speak in a way that we don't have to be at the forefront of that speech. So that's a fabulous, fabulous connection. Thank you for making that one, too. Knowing yourself is probably the one we don't like. And we all think we know ourselves really well. But I can assure you that one of the things I witness over and over and over, and certainly with some of the coaching that I do and just in terms of where people feel they are personally, it's really hard for people to often tell me what it is that they want. We're really good at telling people what we don't want. So when it shows up, we know, I don't like that, I don't want that. But we really then have more difficulty in actually assessing what it is then that we do want to ask for. That is so primary in the workplace. Because you see, we might be up against certain projects or certain tasks and or certain people that definitely don't move us in the way that we might like. And yet, we're all always ready to reject it and or to say, well, I'm not comfortable with that, or I don't like that, or it's not something I can work with. Except what we need to do is formulate that other half. If we're going to talk about what we don't want, we need to always be prepared for what it is that would substitute that. So what is it that you do want? How do you want people to treat you? How do you want to be viewed? How do you want to have your job be executed in front of you and or people to actually speak to you about it? These are all important things, and they lead us into understanding what we're sensitive about. Because literally, that's where it all comes in. So somebody starts telling you what they want, or they start expressing to you, and then all of a sudden we start feeling, uh-oh, I don't like that. That was a hot button. Or they just pointed out something that I'm extremely sensitive about. Well, we've got to know them well. We've got to know that these are our own individual triggers and hot buttons, that they have nothing to do with anybody else out there, that they have been created by us, that they have been experienced by us, that they are only felt by us, and that it's not other people's purpose to actually bring them out. It is just that they happen to, and then we react to it. What is important is recognizing that whether we have physical or emotional triggers, whether it's something about the way we look or things that we can't change, or whether it's something that we feel emotionally that we just don't enjoy, whether it's someone speaking loudly to us or whether it's someone pointing out the way in which we might have a certain physical feature, regardless, how we respond to it is what we have control. The more acceptance we have of ourselves, which is what knowing yourself means, the more acceptance we have, the more we can look in the mirror, the more we can hear ourselves and understand those things about ourselves. Yes, I am a nail biter sometimes. Yes, I can be very loud sometimes. Yes, I have a tendency actually to be very picky about how I eat. When we can acknowledge these things and actually accept them for ourselves and let other people know about them, it makes it a lot easier for us to get on in life. And it also doesn't have us seeing ourselves as being creatures that are very different from anyone else. And then literally, what are you afraid of? Bottom line of acceptance is, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid people are going to find you to be a fraud? Well, they are if you're pretending to be somebody else that you're not anyway. Are we afraid that perhaps even in people not understanding us, that we won't get on well, that they'll think something judgmentally or something that could consequence us? I'm afraid that most of those judgments and the fears that you have are thoughts that you yourself have of yourself. And this is the sad part, is that we are always afraid of how people are judging us because that's the way that we have actually judged ourselves. It's how we look at others, and we happen to be very critical of that. The more critical we are of ourselves, the more critical we are of others. The more accepting and understanding of ourselves we are, then the more accepting and understanding we will be of others. This is where empathy comes in. So our acceptance of self is what equals our empathy of others. And this is what I meant when I was describing assertiveness also equals responsiveness, because it gives us the ability to get on with people.
So, I mean, I've got questions coming in. Wow. And thank you so much, everyone, for your ongoing engagement today. But the question that's coming in, too, is just, you know, this perception that it's still a man's world and that women may be considered emotional or unreliable or emotionally unstable. And I think that word sensitive or that word emotions prevents us from creating space where we can be vulnerable, which actually that vulnerability humanizes us as well, and actually in a lot of cases does earn us respect. So I'm just wondering if you can comment on that perspective.
So I'm going to be blunt here, and I know that many of you out there might hear this statement and think to yourselves, ooh. Yet in the same token, from a position that I carry in life, it's basically one that says that if it's believed that it's a man's world, so let it be believed, and I am a woman in it. And by that, I'm certainly not telling you that I'm giving up power in any way. I'm basically allowing what needs to be thought while I carry on my own life. And through that, it won't stop me from asserting myself with a man. Through that, I won't stop to second guess whether they might be seeing me as weak. And if they are, I'm not concerned about it because I am confident with myself. So this is what I mean about what starts to happen when we have that sense of acceptance and we actually are in charge of our own feelings. Then we don't fear expressing those feelings and feeling any repercussion as a result of it. We have the labels, ladies, because we have created them for ourselves. Yes, we do over-emotionalize when we say what we don't want, what doesn't work, and we carry on forever, as opposed to asking for what it is that we want. We do have a tendency to overreact at times because of what we believe somebody might be thinking or feeling, when really we needed to stop and ask what that feeling or thought was. So a lot of times we create that, and the vulnerability we have is much greater if we aren't ourselves putting in what it is that we want others to understand about us and to work with us on. So that's where the trouble comes in, is when we allow others to choose and to judge, as opposed to our confidence and comfort in accepting who we are and then expressing that in how we do it with others.
And I think it's that expressing part that can get suppressed, which leads us to initiating dialogue, which is, this might be one of my favorites.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating because remember I had started off by saying the very first thing that we need to know from a sense of self-esteem is validation. Knowing yourself is acceptance. And then ultimately initiating dialogue is the communication that's required. There's so many different ways that we can communicate assertively. The I message, though, is the one that prevails. The I message is our ability to actually speak about ourselves, to allow things to be owned, in other words, to take ownership. It's not you are bugging me, or you are causing this, or you shouldn't do this. It's I feel this, I think that, I understand that, and then we finish those statements with what it is that we're reacting to and or what it is that we desire for someone else to understand. The more we own the statement, that's why I-messaging is so important, to be able to just initiate our dialogue with somebody by taking the full regard. I know you might not mean anything by this, and I find that when it happens, I'm very reactive. That's one way of expressing something, so that you are not accusing and or being a particular way with someone that it's not about them. It's about a request or a comment that you are stating about yourself. And again, it can be done in so many different ways. It states assertion modes there, and that's because even during the program, many people are surprised to find out, oh, so it's okay for me to be appreciative or to be nice. Well, yeah, that's the soft way of regarding or providing something with someone. It's an appreciation or a sign of regard, and that's soft. There's simple ways where you just express a thought clearly and concisely. Empathic, where you show some understanding. You actually have an acknowledgement for someone else. And then the confrontive. This is the one people find the most difficult, and where we then challenge our own sense of assertion. Because confronting simply means being able to bring something up to someone that hasn't been brought up, or that simply needs to have some sense of regard now by you. And so confronting someone with what it is that you'd like them to know or understand, and then asking for some action or behavior that might change or shift or be, is how you can actually assert in one particular mode. The angry mode, which is one that, yes, it can be chosen. It would be one that we would use probably if we were out on the street and someone grabbed our arm. And literally, this isn't the time where we want to say, now, I understand you might not mean anything by this. No, this is the time that we actually want to pull our arm, and we want to emphatically say, let go. Now, that may seem like an order or request. It may even border on being aggressive, and yet it is the time where I would ask that you are making a conscious choice. And again, an assertion mode is one that you get to choose, as long as you are in complete desire and acceptance of what it is that you are choosing to say. And that's how we know from initiating dialogue that we get the best out of making an attempt. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. And then that way what you shape, what you actually tell, is what you're designing others to understand about yourself. That's a biggie.
Well, and one of the things that I've heard you say before, Nellie, is that people can't feel what you feel, so you need to help them understand it and then tell them what you want them to.
Yeah, we have a lot of inner ways of speaking where we say, they should know. And especially anybody with a spouse out there or a partner or a significant other, we always believe that people should be mind readers, or they should know who we are or how we feel. And that's a difficult one. We've got to be able to state it. Everyone might be looking for solutions as to how to handle a particular situation between you and them. And yet the reality is your contribution to it is what's going to make the difference, not your assumption that they already understand. Assuming is deadly in assertion. We have to be clear with what it is we want people to know about us, not what we want them to guess.
So the final element in skin, N factor, negating negative self-talk. Now, I think this might be the one that is probably the most widespread across all of us, and I think sometimes we do it and we don't even know that we're doing it. It's so unconscious for many of us.
This is right back to our pre-recorded message, and by that I mean that somewhere along the line there's a tape that's running. This tape has had perhaps some negative impact. It's a tape that tells us we're not good, or we'll never amount to anything, or we can't do that, or we could do better, or all of these things that somewhere along the line are recordings then that seem to automatically come up whenever it is that we're attempting to assert or to be ourselves. Letting go of those types of the inner voice in of itself, letting go of that means that we can't just shake it off. It isn't something that we just say, okay, I'm not going to say that in my head anymore. It's one where we have to substitute that program. We have to substitute that message. And there's many ways of doing it, but substituting that message means when it does come up, because it will be reactive, when we do have that, oh, damn, there I go again doing this, am I ever silly or am I ever stupid, we'll even tell ourselves. I mean, those kinds of things, those thoughts that come up in our head, we're not going to be able to stop them. No different than we're going to be able to stop that feeling. But what we can do is be in control of how we respond to it. So when the thought comes to our head, we need to recognize that thought, validate ourselves, yes, that is the way I think, and I know that I can do this, and I know that I am smart, and I know that I am capable. So by overriding that inner voice, we're also able to let go of some irrational beliefs, which is the next one, letting go of the shoulds and shouldn'ts in our lives, that I should be doing this, and although I want this, I should be like that. And these are the deadliest things that actually inhibit our sense of assertion and our way of being. We feel we should apologize for everything. That's another one that we have a tendency to do. We preface how we speak to people by almost giving excuses or giving long-winded explanations before we actually get to the point of what it is that we want and need. All of these things are because internally we have these beliefs that if I don't do this, or if I do this, then this is how they're going to think, or this is how they're going to feel. These are definitely beliefs that have been created, and they're not real. So we have to overcome them and actually make the statements for ourselves. Expression is important here. So if we're going to negate inner voices and negative self-talk, then we have to be able to express the positive one, motivate ourselves with what it is that we know to be positively true.
Great. And I think if we, tie this back to, the old tapes factor, the poll we conducted earlier where we asked if you speak up and assert yourself, people will, and the number one response was think I'm bossy. Number two was either not like me or not like what I have to say. And the third one being, they'll push back or, not do what I'm asking. So in terms of an old tape, if we have these perceptions of ourselves that if I assert myself, people will see me as bossy, then that ends up sometimes creating the outcome.
The funny thing is that sometimes we do take on, and I'm going to be very clear with this, even when I'm coaching women to work with a difference in how it is that they might be speaking up or what it is that they need to say. Quite often what happens when we then do attempt to assert ourselves is the we come out with a very emphatic persona. We change how it is that we even posture ourselves or our facial expressions, or we believe that we need to be super serious, or somehow that we need to be louder, or that we need to almost sound angry to be serious. So amazingly enough, in a funny way, when we are trying to assert ourselves, because we're afraid and that inner voice is telling us not to be weak, don't be weak, don't be weak, we overcompensate for it. And sometimes we do come across as bossy.
Right.
And sometimes it isn't very pleasant. Assertiveness does not have to sound in any way superior in its volume and or in its expression. It merely is self-expression. So that one, if we, again, can override that internal, because validation is gratification. If we can remember that, the more we validate, it's like that self-acceptance thing. If we want to lose weight, ladies, if we want to change something, it's about looking in the mirror first and foremost and seeing all of it as being incredible and wonderful, taking that sense of acceptance and then validating ourselves for the way it is. This is who I am. I love every inch of it. And this is what I'm going to work on changing. This is what I desire that I now work towards in my physical shift. So the more we are loving and embracing of ourselves as it is, the more power we have to actually adjust what it is that we want.
Perfect. So we do want to, again, ask for some feedback now.
Yeah.
Again, the chat panel is lighting up. We appreciate all your comments. We are going to open up another poll, because now that we've moved through these elements of skin, and we've got, support self-esteem, know yourself, initiate dialogue, and negate negative self-talk, we want to find out from you, as we open up this next poll, to find out which element you find that you struggle with the most. So which of these components do you find trips you up as it relates to, finding the opportunity to get comfortable in your own skin and to move forward. So the results are going to start to come through, and as that's happening, Nellie, again, just all these questions that are coming in, some people are also asking about the fact that, as mothers, they may be helping their daughters get comfortable in their own skin, and, how do we model some of this behavior or help younger generations, whether it's our children, nieces, young people in our lives that we're trying to do it, how do we provide encouragement for them to do the same while we start waiting for the results to come in?
One of the saddest is when women have often said to me, I don't want my daughter to be feeling the way I feel. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there across from a super professional woman, someone who's achieved and accomplished well in her life, and yet somewhere in her sense of insecurity, she doesn't want to pass that on or show that in any way. It's kind of like taking your child to swimming lessons but never wanting to jump in the pool because you can't swim yourself. There's an element of that our children learn not by what it is that we tell them, although we certainly hope that some of those messages stick. Our children learn by what it is that we represent, and that's why some of the messages, even though your mother encouraged and your father supported and your brothers were very welcoming and perhaps your caregivers were the best that you could possibly have asked for and mentors, bottom line is what you witnessed in the actions and how it is that they actually lived their lives and what it is that they allowed decisions to be, that spoke volumes. That is the message that causes the guilt or the shame or the cognitive dissonance in our brains and in our hearts as to, what am I really supposed to be doing, and I've achieved everything, and why am I still not happy? Or, I've got the most incredible family. Why do I feel as though I, should be doing more in life? Or what it is that, again, has been that recorded message. So that's a tough one. And look, negative self-esteem. You see, the messages that we're giving ourselves in our heads, I hate to say it, ladies, but we're the ones. We are our worst enemies. We are the ones that have somehow adopted these ideas, and in spite of the fact that we may say that we don't believe it, we have, by osmosis, carried them through. And it's important for ourselves to actually understand what is it that we value, what is it we believe in spite of what everyone that raised us or worked with us or has taught us or mentored us believes. How do we view the world, and then how is it then that we are actually exercising it that way?
So the results that had come in then are showing at 44% of us that negating negative self-talk is the aspect that we struggle with the most, just in terms of, as you're saying, replaying some of those tapes and initiating dialogue, so kind of finding the courage within ourselves to be able to speak up and assert ourselves using those I messages being the second. But as it relates to some of that negative self-talk, I'm just curious in terms of internal and external obstacles, what keeps us from asserting ourselves? What are your thoughts on some of these obstacles that may exist in our environment and differentiating between internal and external?
Internal are oftentimes the things that we just are either saying to ourselves and or that we've grown up with or lived with or are part of our makeup. It can be cultural values. It can be religious beliefs. It could be ways in which our mothers raised us and or our caregivers. It could be the role that our fathers played. So these are the things that establish our values and our reactions. And values literally are beliefs and ways of being that fit with the scope of what we believe the world to be. So a value is something that needs to be individually determined, and yet we all know that there's internal obstacles that, in spite of the fact that our parents aren't even living anymore, we still feel as though there's some little message internally that's telling us, I'm supposed to have children, I don't want to have children, or some little message in there that also says, why is it that she is so far more successful at getting the promotion in this company, and I can't seem to even get somebody to pay attention to what I have to say? So all of these internal things that could even be physical manifestations, and by that I mean that anxiety starts to develop, depression, stress, all of those things that come from what messages or what internal blocks we may have with the things that we've already ourselves rejected and haven't even given anyone the opportunity to understand. The external blocks are literally the people that you're up against, whether it's your organization and what the fit is there, the person you directly respond to and work for, and whether there's a match in the work ethics and the way of being, and certainly your own family and the thought processes that all your friends and society as a whole, television and media tells us a lot of things we're supposed to feel and think, and yet the contradictions are always abound. Bottom line, you got to know who you are. And literally, to feel and to be in power, you got to know who you are. So once you know that, you get to control the independence instead of having a victim mentality. Because now, when you know who you are, you got to know what you want. Not what you don't want, not what doesn't woo you, but what in fact you actually want in order to support who it is that you are. And that helps us to be at peace with ourselves and with our place in the world. Because if you ask for it, the interesting thing is that it's there for the taking, and people are ready to give and help and understand. We've got to ask for it first. And to be at peace with yourself and who it is that you are in this big, bad world and how you love yourself is really the ultimate goal. If you don't, it's hard for anyone else to.
So, Nellie, in terms of some next steps, I mean, we're saying know who you are, know what you want, and ask for it. And I know that many people who participate in our webinars often have meetings booked right afterwards, but we really do encourage you to take a few minutes to reflect on, what was shared today and think about where you want to focus. So whether that's, within the skin elements that we talked about today, which of those aspects do you want to continue to focus on, something that you learned from today in terms of our conversation, and then what you'll do next. So what are you going to do differently based on what you've heard today? How are you going to negate some of that negative self-talk if that's what you've identified as a key step for you? So that's a suggestion that we have for everyone on the call. Clearly, Nellie, it would be very easy for us to spend a full day or more talking about this, and we will definitely follow up with all of you with the recording from today's session. And there's been a request also for some recommended resources, so we'll include that for you. Yeah, we'll include that. Yeah, in the email follow-up. So you do have an opportunity to keep the conversation going after we wrap up today. Hashtag CNC events again, and using our reference in terms of quoting any of the thoughts you have from today or final thoughts. We will be asking you to complete an evaluation today as well to give us your feedback on today's session, what you want to hear more about on this particular topic. And CMC is also in the process of looking at expanding our portfolio in terms of courses that are available for women in leadership. So if you are interested in such topics, please let us know on this evaluation so that we can identify what is of interest and importance to you. So as you close out your session today and WebEx, you'll get a pop-up asking you to complete that survey. And Nellie, I am just more inspired every time I have the opportunity to speak with you, and just really want to thank you for sharing this hour with us and on all of your brilliant insights. You are a model for all of us, and we're really excited that you took the time to be here with us today. So for all of you participating online, thank you very much. We'll look forward to continuing the conversation with you, and you will be receiving a follow-up email with the copy of the link for today's recording. Thank you so much.
Thank you.